back to my live Arch install. My second attempt. Hopefully this time the baby doesn't wake up. Yeah. For those just joining me, I did this morning I attempted to do a live Arch install. I also attempted yeah, let me just make sure I got some sound coming in here. Okay. This time around I'm not going to try the open chat with Jitsi, just because that seemed to complicate things a little bit. I will start the installation from the beginning. I'll just wait for some people to show up. Keep in mind that I've done the Arch install before. It's nothing new to me. So, I mean, it wasn't due to a failure of the system or anything like that. Especially on a generic AMD system, an Arch install is not difficult if you know what you're doing. The tricky parts come in sometimes if you're doing like NVIDIA or something like that. It took me a while to figure that out. But if you just have like a generic, like a basic AMD or an Intel, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? When they fuse the graphics, what's it called? It's not hybrid, it's something else. It's on the tip of my tongue, and I know I should know that. But I'm sure someone in the chat's gonna rake me over the coals for not remembering a word like that. Here, let me see. Gonna wait a little bit for people to show up. For those that don't know, the way that I'm going to do this, I did share the links in the description this time. The Arch Wiki, it's going to take you to the home page. But I also shared a link to the glorious Egg Rolls Arch UEFI install. And the reason is because he has the most comprehensive, clear install process. Is someone else streaming tonight? I don't want to step on someone's toes here. Cause hey, if someone else is streaming, I'll cut it for now and do this later. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. This is not a competition, really. We're all in it for the same goals. So anyway, I'll give it maybe 5 minutes. We'll maybe chat about something else until some people start popping in. But yeah. For those that don't know, I do run Arch as my main daily driver. So me doing this live how-to install or a live installation is kind of my way of doing the Biddle challenge without having to completely reinstall my system, which I got it working back in January. It's the same install from January when I bought the machine, and it's been working ever since. So I really don't think that rolling releases are as unstable as maybe they once were, or that they got a reputation for. And I mean, honestly, keeping things up to date actually fixed a few bugs for me that some of the static releases were having issues with. And matter of fact, there was one issue. I forget what it was by now, because it was a long time ago. It was when I first installed Arch, and there was a bug in some program, and they said, "Oh, the fix is already in, but you gotta enable the testing repositories to get the fix." So I did. I enabled the testing repos. I'm living farther on the. If Arch is a bleeding edge, and Arch with the testing repos are the like blood gushing edge. But it fixed the issue, and my system was running perfectly fine ever since that. So like, I mean, I guess maybe it's a hit or miss with some people, but I've had better luck with the Arch rolling release than I have with pretty much any other distribution out there, with the exception maybe of OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, but I haven't run that as like, I keep that on the back burner as like my backup if Arch ever scorns me, because I've come to appreciate the rolling release model. But no, like, I do enjoy my Arch system, and I guess I'll show. I have this i3 block up here called I guess the block itself is called News Up. Whoops. Again, I am trying to get used to this new keyboard here. They if you know, I run i3, which anybody who has run i3 or any tiling window manager knows that the mod key is everything. And the geniuses that made this keyboard decided to put my super key, which I use as my mod key, on the opposite side of the keyboard. So normally, normal people put their super key on the left side. This keyboard decided they were going to put it on the right side. And so my muscle memory is all wacky today. And this keyboard just came in today. So muscle memory, my left thumb keeps shooting for the super key, which is now the function key. And I keep having to force myself to use my right hand to go for the mod key. Hey, Lamer, how you doing? I'm attempting a live Arch install today again. I tried it earlier today. Unfortunately, the baby woke up and he was a little cranky, so I had to cut out a little bit early. But yeah, I'm gonna hop back into it. Just giving it some time to see if anybody else hops in to watch me torment myself. Why do I torture myself and run Arch on a daily basis? Ah, man. It's so unstable that it actually fixed some bugs that I was having issues on other distros with. Anyway, more to the point, I'm gonna try to get a feel for who's watching out there. We got one watching now, so for those that don't know, I've got in the description I've got a link to the Arch wiki, or the Arch website. You can get to the wiki from this, the Arch website's homepage. Yeah, maybe it was. Maybe it was. I started using Arch back in 2015. Back in 2015, that was my first experimentations with Arch. I started it as like a side project, you know. I wanted to be able to say by the way. But no, all kidding aside, I saw what some people were doing, and I saw that it was like a gorgeous system when people got it running up and running correctly. And my first attempt with it was on a Dell from hell with a Broadcom chipset, and I tried going through the process, and it wouldn't pick up the wireless card. And this is before I knew that Broadcom was such a nightmare, and this was before I knew how to deal with Broadcom really. So I gave up on it, tore my hair out, gave up on it, threw it away. But then I started seeing like the stuff that other people were doing with the Arch systems, and I was like, I've gotta learn this. I've gotta learn this. So I stuck my nose to it. Took me days to find, up. You want to make, if you're gonna install it via how-to videos, you're gonna want to make sure that the videos you're watching are up to date, because there are things that were applicable back in the day that they've either removed from the ISO. Remember, it gets a snapshot every month. You want to use an up-to-date guide, and you want to use that in conjunction with the Arch wiki. So you were with Matthew Moore. Yeah, I didn't know about Matthew Moore back then. I used like a bunch of different YouTube videos, and I just kind of globbed all the information that worked together and like compiled them into my notes. Yeah. Yeah, and like I'm not one of those Arch purists who thinks that you need to do it via the command line. You're gonna run into those trolls on the Arch forums. The purists. They expect you to. Yeah, that mid finger. That name does ring a bell. I think that was one of the. But back then I had a BIOS based system. It wasn't. I didn't have a UEFI system back then. When I finally got a system with EFI, I had to find a new guide, because if you try to install Arch on a system with EFI using the BIOS method, you're gonna have a bad time. It's just not gonna work. And everybody and their brother, and I'm not faulting them for this, okay? It is very difficult to run a decent Arch install and record it without using VirtualBox, okay? Like right now, what I'm doing to do this install is I'm actually using SSH to remote into another laptop that I have sitting here. And that's how I'm going to do it on real hardware and make sure it's EFI compatible. But most people have their install guides in a VirtualBox that uses BIOS. And if you try to follow that those guides on like real hardware that has an EFI system, you're not going to be able to boot, and you're just going to be confused. You're going to tear your hair out. So the guide that I found that helped me get through the EFI install was this guy right here, by the name of, or at least he calls his blog here, The Glorious Egg Roll. And this was the first real comprehensible guide that I could find that was compatible with EFI. And earlier this year, at the beginning of this year, I bought a machine with NVIDIA, which that was another hurdle to get through, especially with Arch. With any distribution, NVIDIA is going to be a nightmare, especially NVIDIA Optimus. But Arch was the distribution that provided the most comprehensive tools to get it functioning properly. One of them being Optimus Manager through the AUR, which seems to be an Arch-only app. Like, you could try to get it to run other distros, but from what I hear, it doesn't work, or at least not well. But I did share the link to this guy's guide in the description. So anyway, without further ado, we're going to get into it. I am going to start the install from the beginning, just because it seems like we have a new audience. Hey Ben, I know I was going to try to make it a open chat, but I decided not to do that again, just because Jitsi seemed to complicate things, and I'm gonna try to do the install here. Hopefully the baby stays asleep. So anyway, we're gonna start this in the beginning. I'm just gonna wipe the older video that went up there, and I'm just gonna start this from the beginning. So anyway, the first thing we're gonna do, according to this, the first thing that you should do is obviously you want to download the Arch ISO. So we're going to go here to downloads, and I've already got the ISO. I've already burned it to my USB. I made my USB bootable. This is the command that you want to use to make it bootable. Make sure you get the right USB stick. Matter of fact, I'll open up a terminal, and I'm gonna just CD into, this is where I keep all my ISOs. This is in a folder. Normally I would keep it on my desktop, but since I've been running i3, where like desktop icons really isn't a thing, so what I did was in my home directory I made a folder called random, where I basically stick all my random folders, like stuff I would have put on the desktop if I still used the desktop for that. But anyway, this is my operating systems folder within my random folder, and as you can tell, I have a ton of ISOs in here. Anyway, what you want to do is run sudo. I don't have the USB drive plugged in. It's plugged into my other machine. As you can tell, it's already booted into the live Arch environment. But what you're going to do is run sudo dd bs equals 1. Don't mind me, I'm still getting used to this stupid keyboard. The Arch ISO, and for you it's obviously going to be if you're doing this on a later date, it's going to be a different number, but you want to do the latest Arch ISO. And then your output for me would have been SDC, but because the USB stick is not plugged in, that's not going to work. But I just wanted to show you that command there. So anyway, we're going to attempt. The next thing you want to do is make sure that you have yeah, I think I have Bumblebee installed, and I think what Optimus Manager is it's a kind of a front end for Bumblebee that allows me to switch between Intel, the Intel graphics and the NVIDIA graphics. But I always have it boot into the NVIDIA side of things, because that's the only way that it will recognize my external display. Um, I assume it's because that the NVIDIA card controls the VGA and all that stuff. But I just to simplify things, I just have it boot into the NVIDIA. But the NVIDIA Optimist Manager does allow me to switch between the two. And it's the only tool I know of in Linux that allows me to do that, like within the system itself. So, yeah, without further ado, we're going to get into the installation process here, which, by the way, I've done before. As you can tell, we do have internet connectivity because I was able to remote into it. But I am going to ping, no, it's .org, right? So I'm going to ping archlinux.org just to make sure I have connectivity, which I do. I'm in the machine that I'm installing it on is this machine right here. I'm using a SSH to remote into it from my home machine here. And the reason is because there's no easy way to record an Arch Linux install on real hardware. This is the best I can come up with. Okay, and I know it's kind of sloppy, but it'll get the job done. Really all I did was I booted the Arch ISO into the EFI mode. I created a password for my root user so that I can secure SSH into it, and then I started the SSH daemon, SSHD, and so I just did those like the only things I did, and the only reason I did it was so that I can SSH into it. Other than that, this is a vanilla live environment. So once again, the first thing we want to do is we're going to check to see if we're in EFI or if we're in BIOS. And the way we do that is with a command called EFI var -L. Now, I got results. If you get any results at all with this, it means you're in EFI mode. Okay? If you don't get any results, you're in BIOS mode. If you have a machine that's EFI enabled, you might want to go back and check to make sure you booted into EFI or next time. So yeah, we're going to clear that out just to make things a little bit easier here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to partition our disks. And best way to do that is we're going to run lsblk. It's going to give us a list of the disks that we have. And the disks that we're going to want to install it on. Yeah, I did the same thing. I printed it out. That's not as viable today to print it out, because there's so many things that they have as like links to other like books of pages, that if you were to print it out, it would be like an entire novel. Hey Steve, how you doing? I'm doing my Arch install, my live Arch install. Yeah, I'm gonna be doing it the Arch way. Yeah. So that the Arch trolls and the Arch wiki we could just say by the way to each other all day. But anyway, yeah, it's not as viable to print out the wiki anymore, because I'll show you here. If you go to the installation guide here, this is how you get to the install guide. And matter of fact, let me get Let me get me out of the way. So if you scroll down, it is like a very short page. The installation wiki is a very short page here. And you think, wow, this is easy. But then you stop and you see like every... Just give me 1 second here. Can I put it in the fridge? I'm live streaming. I might not. Okay. Okay, so the reason that this is short is because a lot of the steps, a lot of the things that should be front and center, in my opinion, a lot of things that should be front and center are easily missable links. And if you're not careful, you might miss something very important. Which is why I say that the best way to install Arch is to have another guide that you trust in conjunction with the Arch Wiki. Because there are the things that you would miss in the Arch Wiki are really front and center in this guide here. Yeah. And so here we go. We're going to start with the first step is partitioning our drives. But the first thing you want to do is make sure that the entire drive is wiped clean, completely clean, to avoid confusion. So I'm going to run gdisk, and in my case, and you want to specify the drive that you want to run it on. In my case, it's SDA. So we're going to hit gdisk dev SDA. And by the way, Steve, I am SSH'd into this lap. Whoops. I'm not doing this on my home machine. I'm doing this on this machine. I'm using SSH. I'm remoted into it from my terminal here. Yeah, this laptop here is a pretty generic AMD quad core. It has what's the word I'm looking for? My God, I don't know why this word is escaping me, but it's that thing where the graphics is like, I know it's not called Fusion. It's when the graphics is run by the CPU and the RAM, not by a dedicated graphics card. It's like it's like, I don't know why that word is escaping me. I want to kick myself when I know what it is, but like yeah, on with the installation here. So we're going to run gdisk. And it looks like my terminal has frozen on me for some unknown reason. So we're just going to open that up again. And resize that again. And whoops. You know what? nothing there. I wonder... Sometimes the secure SSH does this. It's not a fault of Arch. You would not okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna kill the remote login from, and if this doesn't work, then I'll just reboot into the live environment. So anyway, we're gonna give this another shot. Okay, yeah, reboot it is. Yeah, kids, don't try this at home. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna redo what I did before. I'm gonna set a password for the root user in the live environment, and then I'm just gonna start the SSH service. And this is kind of the best way to do it for recording. Yeah, the old timer moments. Well, hey, technically I'm still in my 20s until September, so I don't want to talk about that right now. Little one's gonna think I'm dust. Let me see here. So I'm gonna set the password, running psswd. I'm gonna run Wi-Fi menu to join my wireless network. And that's what these live streams are. Nothing goes. Usually things don't go the way it's planned. But anyway, CTL SSH. I'm gonna run start SSHD, and just gonna run a status on it. It is active. It is running. So what am I waiting for is a good question. Oh yeah, I gotta just check the IP address. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna run the SSH root at 10.0.0.125. And that's actually a that's easily fixable. For that, you just have to remove. It's because the system rebooted, and so it thinks it's a different machine. And so you just got to remove the known hosts file there in the SSH, and that'll take care of that. So at 10.0.0.125, hit yes. Password, super secret, not going to announce it. And I am in once again. No more freezing. By the way, that file right there, the install.txt, that has the entire installation right there. So in theory, you should be able to install Arch right from the ISO. Just keep a separate TTY open with this open, and in theory, you should be able to install Arch without the wiki, because I mean, that's in theory. I'm not going to test it now. But that's for the really crazy ones. Anyway, we're going to get into it here. G disk. I'm going to run lsblk once again to see the disks, and of course it's SDA. So we're going to run G disk dev SDA. Ugh, don't mind me, I'm still getting used to this keyboard. For those that don't know, or if you're just joining me, I bought a new keyboard because the old one had like some wires, and they were getting on my nerves, and it made a lot of noise, and it kept waking the baby up late at night. So I bought this keyboard in the hopes that it'd be quieter and take care of it. Well, save me 2 USB sticks. But anyway, normal people put the super key on the left hand side or both sides of the keyboard. This keyboard, the geniuses at the manufacturing plant, did not put a super key on this side. It is now a function key. The super key is on the right hand side of the keyboard. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't transition the video, but as you can see, I got the super key on the left hand side, and you got the function key on the, and then you got the super key on the right hand side. And so my muscle memory for my normal i3, my left thumb keeps shooting for the mod key, and I keep hitting the function key instead, then forcing my right hand to go for the mod key. It's been a trip. So anyway, the first key you want to hit here is X to get into the advanced expert mode here. Then you hit Z for zap, Y for yes, Y for yes. Now the disk is completely wiped. So it's like completely brand new. You got rid of any master boot record or anything that was on it. The next thing you want to do is run C gdisk dev SDA once again, because that's where you want to put that's where we're going to make the partitions. So anyway, we're going to hit enter. It's going to say warning, non-GDPT or damage detected. We're going to just hit press any key to continue. The first partition, and we're going to be going by the guide here. A little bit of both. This guide does have a guide for if you want to make separate partition for your home and your root. However, to simplify things, I will just be making one mount point for both root and home partitions. And so, without further ado, the first thing we're going to do is you can hit enter for a new partition. It's going to ask you for the first sector. You're going to leave that blank, hit enter, and it's going to ask you for the size in sectors or KMGP GTP. So that's asking you can do it in either in sectors or kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes, petabytes. Okay, so we're going to make this first partition 1 gigabyte, and that's how you would write that. 1 GIB, lowercase I, uppercase B. We're going to make this one EF00 to make it a FAT32 partition. This is going to be our boot partition, our EFI partition, if you will. And we're going to name it boot, because this is for an EFI system, right? So we're going to hit new again, and this is going to be our swap partition. We're going to make this one 8 gigabytes, since I have 8 gigs on the system that I'm installing it. So I'm going to make the swap partition 8 gigs. And the hex code for this is 8200. And we're going to name it swap. Now the next partition, we're just going to use the rest of the disk. So So you leave that all blank. And the default code is 8300. That's correct. That's for a Linux file system. And we're going to name this one root. And we're going to take a quick look at this. And of course, you got to put the top. It says free space. We can't get rid of that. Can't get rid of that. It's always going to be there, no matter what. We got the EFI system, 1 gigabyte. Some people say to make that 500 megs, but I find it's best to have like 1 gig. Especially if we have a terabyte hard drive here. 1 gig's not going to kill you. 8 gig swap, and the rest is for the Linux system itself. So we're going to go to write, press enter. It's going to say, are you sure you want to make this partition table to disk? Because it's going to wipe everything. You're going to click yes. It's going to write the system. Now we go to quit. Now we made the partitions. And what we're going to want to do now is actually make the file systems. And so we're going to go down here, and we want, like we said before, we want to make the EFI system a FAT32. And so we're going to run, that one says to run mks.v.fat, but if you run mks.vfat, it will get you the exact same results. And you want to specify which partition you want it to format. And so I'm going to format it as dev SDA, since that's where we put our boot partition. And now, voila, it is FAT32. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the swap partition. And that's going to be dev SDA2. We're going to put the swap on. And what swap is it is a partition on your hard drive that can be used as RAM or like RAM by your system. If you're running low on RAM, it can just use this partition as like an expansion of it. It is absolutely necessary if you want to use hibernation, which I don't actually know what hibernation is exactly, but I actually know that you need it if you're going to run that. My home system has, or my main computer that I'm running here has 32 gigs of RAM. During the installation process, I gave it 8 gigs of swap space, but I've never, ever, ever, ever seen it dip into it. But I leave it on there because it is recommended. So there's that. You can run top to make sure that it's running that is recognizing and running the swap space. Up here, so it might be 8,000 megabytes. It's going to measure in megabytes. That's about 8 gigs, so that's right. I'm going to press clear. Now the next thing we want to do is make our ext4. Alright, so we're going to hit mkfs ext4 dev, and in our case here it's SDA3. Now this one could take a while. Hit A. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we don't want to go overboard anymore because a lot of the systems are coming out. It's not expensive to get like a really high-end, like tons of RAM system, like this ThinkPad that I got here. It's an i7 with it's got 4 cores. Each one has 2 threads, so it's got 8 threads. It's got 32 gigs of RAM in it. DDR3, but it's still 32 gigs of it. I have a 240 gig solid state drive in there, which I installed my operating system on, which by the way is Arch. And I have a terabyte. I swapped out the DVD drive for a for the disk drive bay that you can buy for this model of ThinkPad, and I put a terabyte regular magnetic hard drive in there, which I have my home folder directly mounted to. You wanna know what the whole thing cost me? Little ballpark 550 US dollars. That was it. That was for like the whole thing. Drive bay, extra hard drive, system itself, the RAM, all of it. About 550. So I mean, it's not hard to get a machine with ridiculous amounts of RAM. Um, and this thing does most what I need it to do. I haven't had any issues with it. Anyway, so it looks like the disk is done formatting. So I'm gonna go here, check out what the next step is. So the next step is we're gonna mount a few directories here, and you want to make sure you get this right here. So we're gonna mount dev.dev/sda3 to mnt. Okay, now here we're going to make a couple directories. As you can tell here, you're going to make directory mnt boot and mnt home. And we can do this with just one command. So we're just going to hit home and mnt boot. It's going to make both of those directories. lsblk. Matter of fact, we can hit lsmnt to make sure that both directories were created. Just another example of how the command line is utterly superior to any graphical interface. I'm kidding. I don't know where I was going with that. But anyway, we'll hit clear. Both those directories have been created now. So we're gonna want to mount a couple of other directories here. Mount dev sda1 to mnt boot. Yeah, 16 gigs is a lot for is a pretty penny too. I don't feel complete until I max out a machine. So this thing's maximum was 32 gigs of RAM. I would have felt like a nagging voice in the back of my head until I upped it to its maximum, which I did. But you want to know something? Even with it all, OBS running, the SSH, all this running, it's only using about 3 gigs of the 32 gigs of RAM. So, I mean, just because I have the resources, it doesn't mean I'm going to toss everything and the kitchen sink at my system, right? And, like, yeah. I try to keep things lightweight still. Anyway, we're mounting a couple of drives here. MNT home. And the reason that we're mounting these drives is to make sure that things get installed where they're supposed to go, basically. I do have a docking station, but it's a docking station mini. And all I do is I basically like here, let me remember to turn on the webcam this time. As you can see, I just clipped the ThinkPad in here. It's got a bunch of ports in the back. I gotta clean my desk, I know. But it's got a bunch of ports in the back that will allow me to install like a third display if I want. I think if I read correctly on the ThinkPad's website, its maximum is 4 external displays if you get the right cables and the right monitors for it. So it'll be a total of 5 including the built-in. So what I have to do to get a third display basically is I want to get the exact same monitor that I have here, and I had to get a DVI to HDMI converter cable, which is it's not hard to get that. And I am going to get those things because after looking at Jitsi and a lot of these like Hangout replacements and like the things I'm going to have to do to get like a decent live stream going, it's just going to make life a ton easier if I have a third display over here. And so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go for it. I need the real estate at this point. Well, not need, but like very strongly want to make my life a ton easier. Just because what I found with Jitsi is if I move its window to a workspace that's out of focus, or that I'm not focused on, or is out of view, the video freezes. And so a third monitor to keep the video chat in focus and put it through OBS on this screen and monitor the YouTube thing on another screen would make life a hell of a lot easier for me. But anyway, back to the Arch install here. The next step here is to create our mirror list, and basically what this is in Linux we have, instead of like when you're looking for a new piece of software, instead of going to the website, downloading the executable and hoping it is what it says it is and functions the way it's supposed to, we have these things called repositories. And these are where all of our packages, that's what Linux calls our applications, are stored. They are FTP servers, if I remember correctly, and a mirror list basically tells your system which server to download these packages from. And ideally you want to make this mirror list, you want to tell it to look for the packages in the servers that are closest to you physically. So keep them in the same country, blah blah blah, the same, to make the download times a lot faster. So what we're gonna do is if I can get the right focused window here, we're gonna cd into etc pacman.d, and here's our mirror list. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy the mirror list, and we're going to copy it to a file called mirrorlist.backup. And what we're going to do with this is I'm going to have it synchronize the databases. I just ran pacman.syy. All that's doing is synchronizing the mirrors in the current live environment. And the reason for that is there's a package that we're going to have to install here. And pacman.syy, that just synchronizes the. It's basically like if you're used to a Debian-based system, it's basically you're running apt update. You're just synchronizing the repositories. The package that we're looking for is pacman/contrib, and this is going to bring a very important command in called rank mirrors. And the reason for this is it's going to automatically alright, Steve, I'll see you later. Yeah, so what rank mirrors is going to do is going to automatically detect, it's going to automatically ping all of the servers, and it's going to automatically pick out the 6 fastest ones, and it's going to output them into the mirror list. Now, normally in the past we would have to run this command to remove the comments from, or the hashtags from each of the servers. However, in the newer ISOs, as you could tell, I'm going to run nano. I'm going to open up the mirror list in a program called nano. As you could tell here, matter of fact, these hashtags here means comments. And so if I put a hashtag in front of one of these things, it's going to ignore it. Like if it's not even there. And normally all of these servers would have been hashtagged or commented out, and you would have to go in manually and uncomment all the servers that you wanted. However, they have stopped doing that, and so the SED command is no longer required. Matter of fact, I've left this alone completely. It didn't even run rank mirrors at some points, and it worked fine until the mirror list got updated and I had to download the new one. And that's a thing you just have to learn to, like, sometimes you just have to do that to maintain your system. But here I'm just gonna X out of it. I'm gonna hit no. I'm not gonna save it. It's just the same crap. But anyway, we're gonna run rank mirrors, and we're gonna hit tac n for numbers 6. It's gonna find the 6. It's going to find the 6 fastest mirrors, and I'm going to I believe it. It's worked fine for me too. Ever since I stopped commenting them out, and for my experience, for my opinion, it's like the more mirrors you have, the better. But you know what, I'm gonna run it anyway. And this is gonna take a minute. Nice. If I ran Gentoo, Ben, I would use it. But the only thing keeping me from running Gentoo is the compile times. But what I will say is this is let me open up a terminal here, and I'll show you. I'm sure you guys know that Spatry, from Spatry's Cup of Linux, has his own Manjaro spin, and it's based on Manjaro, which is based on Arch. And he does have his own repository, and I added it to my repository list on my host system. And so on my vanilla Arch system, as you could tell when I update my repositories here, you're gonna find don't mind me, I'm still getting used to this keyboard. You're going to find mcol64. That is Spatry's repository, and I added it to my Arch system. So far it hasn't given me any issues. There was one that gave me some issues called archlinux.fr. It had Yower and other tools in it, but you know, Yower's been depreciated, and that repository started giving me problems. So I switched to Yay as my AUR helper. And unless I trust the repo, I don't add an unofficial repo to my repo list. You know, I trust Spatry's going to maintain his. So what's going on with you guys out there? Have you guys taken the Arch challenge yet? It is Arch Week. According to the Big Daddy community, it is Arch Week. That means you guys have to live in my hell for a week. No, all kidding aside, the reason why I decided to stick with Arch after my experiments with it is for a few reasons. A, software availability. Um, really? And how have you been liking it? One of the things that gets me into it is software availability. Where like I wasn't going to use Ubuntu anymore because I started putting Amazon ads into my dash. So Ubuntu wasn't an option for me anymore. Um, I tried Fedora, but it was too much of a pain to get certain applications. I know everything is available for it, and I love its philosophy. Problem was, my computer hated it. So, next, I tried OpenSUSE. Started giving me some weird dependency cycle issues. Saying like, okay, well, this if you try to install this, it's gonna break this package. Do you want to break it? So I'm like, okay, well, this is too much. And it was honestly issues like that that was making me nervous to try Arch, because I was thinking, well, what if I run into these dependency issues in a foreign package manager and I have nothing but a command line to go by? But I decided to give it a shot anyway and see how far I could take it. And Arch has been the only distribution that didn't give me those weird dependency cycle issues. All the packages I could want were either in the main repositories, which are huge by the way, or in the AUR. And all the dependencies were already taken care of. In any package, it just automatically pulls them in. And so, when I tell people how great Arch is, I'm not one of those purists that says Arch is great, but you gotta do it the Arch way. Do it the command line way. No. I'm talking about the advantages of Arch. Having an Arch-based system is for me has been the most powerful thing in the world. And like, it makes my day when I see people running Manjaro, right? Because they're getting all the advantages of an Arch-based system, which I think, honestly, like Arch is proving to be. I think it's going to be the way of the future. Like it's going to be what most future distributions are going to be based off of. And like, I'm not a developer. I'm not a distro developer or anything like that. But like, I already see it happening with Manjaro. You know, and Tergos was a bit of a fluke. But like Manjaro's proven that it can be done, and it's a very powerful base. And as like, I mean, I get it. People think that rolling releases are unstable, but let's see. What is the average user going to use the AUR for? Let's see. Google Chrome. They want the Chrome. You might need a Broadcom chipset driver from the AUR. I think that's only available in the AUR. You might need an NVIDIA Optimus, but like, really, what new user has a computer with NVIDIA Optimus on it? And so, I mean, the only apps that I run into problems with are breakages in that can be blamed on it are like fringed, like penetration testing tools that I like to play with. Sometimes those will break, but those always break. Even in the distributions they were designed for. I ran Kali and I had the same issues. And so, the average user is not going to be using apps like that. So, we can keep that in mind with, Arch-based distros and rolling releases in general. I don't think they're as unstable as they used to be. And I think they get a bad rap. Honestly, I've had more bugs fixed by keeping my system as up to date as possible than I've had breaks. But that's just me. It could be a hit or miss with certain people. But anyway, it looks like the rank mirrors has completed. So we'll get back to the installation. Yeah, I just noticed that. I got used to it taking forever. We'll take a look at it. We'll run cat, which stands for catalog, by the way. And it did pick out the top 6, which I probably could have gotten away with not even dealing with that, really. But hey. So the next step is to install the base system, and I would recommend installing this other group here called Base Devel. The base development group as well. Matter of fact, it looks like I missed a step. It's just a time and date, though. It's not a big whoop. Well, we can do that now if we really want to. See, this is why I say to run two guides. One guide that you trust, and the Arch Wiki. So we'll do it. And what did it say? It says set NTP true. Okay, so get rid of the dash dash. Right. Okay. NTP true. Okay. Anyway, we'll take a look at what the next step is. And it is to install the base system. So we're going to run pack strap tech I mnt base devel. And by the way, you can add other packages to this, such as Firefox and even like graphical environments like GUIs if you want to add that to this list here. But you don't need to, and I would recommend keeping it simple. So we're just going to run that. It's going to ask you if you want to install. These are actually groups of packages. Hit enter for the default, and Y for yes. And it's going to go through installing the base system and the base devel. And the reason I recommend installing the base devel too is because sooner or later you're going to run into a situation where you need those tools. And it's just easier to just install it now. Some people will just install the base, but you really should install the base devel as well. And then the next step, we're going to generate the fstab, which basically, if I'm not mistaken, the fstab is a file with a list of with a list of partitions and drives and stuff that tells your system what it can boot from and tell the system what's there, stuff to automatically mount. I could be wrong about some of this stuff, but if anybody's out there falling asleep, let me know. I'll try to make this exciting and I don't know, delete the kernel or something. See what happens. I'm kidding. Oh. Excuse me. And if I make a mistake in my description of some of this stuff, feel free to correct me. You got Mountain Dew? Man, I got black coffee. This stream has been brought to you by black coffee. Keeping me awake since last night. Thank you, Lamer. I was hoping nobody heard that. I tried to get it away from the mic. And there it goes. Well, I'll get some cookies and milk later. I also bought some Reese's. Reese's does not support this show, by the way. Although they're welcome to. Reese's peanut butter cups are the best. But if you're going to be maintaining the system, one of the best things to do is I find that it does, if you get a kernel update, it does push kernel updates through regular updates. It is good practice to reboot it after each kernel update. And it's not going to force you to, right? You can keep running as long as you want without rebooting, but just know that certain things are not going to work right until you reboot it after a kernel update. For example, USB sticks aren't going to mount. At least this is from my experience. Virtual machines are not going to run. And the reason being is that they're looking for modules that were just deleted. But a simple reboot will get them to look for the correct mods. They're the correct modules. That's the only times that I've ever really rebooted my system after an update. And I've never had any really issues. Yeah, if you don't want to reboot, they do have an option to use the LTS kernel. However, I find that as long as you don't have any crazy wacky hardware, honestly, the only piece of hardware that gave me issues with kernel updates was a Broadcom chipset. If you have a Broadcom chipset, I suggest maybe using Manjaro. Just because it's easier to get the LTS kernel running in Manjaro, and you get all the advantages of Arch with it. But no, if you have a Broadcom chipset, you're gonna run into issues. Just because they refuse to release the code, and so the developers of that particular driver, what the hell am I saying? Developers of this driveway here. The developers of that driver do their best, God bless them, to reverse engineer it. And they don't get the patches out for the newest kernel out in time for the upgraded kernel. And so if you get an updated kernel and then you reboot it, you're going to get a kernel panic every time. And that happened to me when I had a chipset driver. Every time there was a kernel update, I would reboot it, kernel panic. It was guaranteed. And the only way to solve it would be to go in with a live Arch environment, remove the Broadcom driver, reboot it, install another Broadcom driver. I eventually gave up on it, bought an external wireless card and just disabled the damn thing. That was my workaround for then, and I permanently solved that problem by never buying a laptop with a chipset driver again. With a Broadcom chipset ever again. Just don't do it. If you can control it, don't do it. If you already bought the machine, you got it, well, you gotta work with what you got, right? But if you have any control over it, just don't do it. So anyway, the install is done installing, so we're gonna go for the next step. Is we're gonna generate the fstab. And so the TAC-U here, this little option here is gonna make it use the UUID, I think is what it's called. Well, Lemur, I have a laptop and I take it with me a lot of places, and I don't like to leave it running, just because it kills the battery a little bit. So it does reboot quite a bit, just because it's on the go. But if it was a desktop, I wouldn't reboot it every day. And I've been curious to see what would happen if I let it go a week without updating it. I usually update this thing like once or twice a day. And I only reboot it after kernel updates. Like, that's the only time I reboot it after an update, or purposely reboot it after an update. Obviously I shut it down before I pack it away. I turn it on when I get to wherever I'm going. But anyway, so we're gonna go for generate fstab, gen fstab. And we can run the help menu just to get a better understanding of what we're actually doing. And so the UUID is a unique, I forget what it's called, what it actually stands for, but the UUID is a unique sequence of numbers and letters. I think it's in hexadecimal format. And it basically makes it so that your partition there can only boot on your system. So you can't just pull the hard drive out of this computer, pop it in another computer, and expect it to boot. If the UUID doesn't match, it's not going to boot. And I know it's kind of a pain, but I guess it's a security measure. Back in the day, that was something that Linux used to boast a lot, was that here we just pop the hard drive out of one system and install it on another system and have it boot like nothing happened because the kernel's got everything baked in. We can't boast that anymore, thanks to UEFI, or that particular feature of it. Which, I mean, I get it, it's a security update, it's a security thing, but it's got its advantages and disadvantages like anything else. So we're going to go ahead and generate the fstab. So we're going to hit gen fstab, TAC-U, TAC-P, gen fstab, TAC-U, TAC-P /mnt TAC-P. Sorry, I'm going back and forth just to make sure I get this command correctly. And you want to make sure to use 2 carets, 2 forward slashes. You want to, the difference is that if you run one forward caret thing, forward arrow, it's going to overwrite that file. If you run 2, it's going to append it to the end of the file. So we don't want to delete this file. We just want to append this to the bottom of it. And so we're going to run that, and it's going to go to mnt etc/fstab. Okay, let's checking it one more time to make sure I got it right. And to make sure that it did create this file, we can run cat mnt etc fstab to make sure that there's actually stuff in that file. And as you can tell, there is. As you can tell, it did go for the UUID here, and this unique identifier. And so we got the swap partition here, we got our home partition here, we got our root partition, our root folder, and this is our EFI. And so that was generated correctly. So we're going to go ahead, and the next step is we're going to root, which means we're going to enter into our newly installed Arch system. And to do that, we're going to run a command called archroot mnt. Okay, just mnt. And now we're inside our newly installed Arch system. And how can we tell it? We can run ls, and so we're in our system. So we're going to check to see what is our next step. We're going to create our locale. So we're going to go into LFS. Oh my gosh. I guess that's on my list to try at least once. But it's just, I just don't have the time for it. And it's like, if it's a rolling release, it's gonna get like updates every day. And so we're gonna go into nano etc locale.gen. That's right, locale. Yeah. And we're gonna hit enter. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna look for our keyboard layout, which for me is English. So you're going to go down to enus.utf. We're going to uncomment that. So we're going to Control O to write it out, and then Control X to exit. Now we're going to run locale tac gen to generate our locales. Yeah, I mean, if I try LFS, it's just going to be to say that I did it. That's not something that I'm going to try to run as a daily driver. I tried Gen 2. I got it fully installed. I guess I can say it's a notch in my belt. But I just don't. With a 1-year-old, with life, it's just, I just wouldn't have the time to maintain Gentoo or anything like that. Um, and so like I think that Arch gives me a pretty good balance of like I build it myself, and it's binary based instead of all source code based, and so it's a lot quicker, easier to maintain a little bit. Um, so yeah, I mean that's why I run Arch instead of Gentoo. But here, so the next thing we want to run is we want to set our language to English as well, assuming you're English. Is the king English? I don't know. So anyway, we're gonna run echo. I'm sorry, I keep going back and forth. I know. Lang equals en us dot utf tech 8, and we want to send this to make sure we got okay, so etsy locale.conf. Yeah, maybe we could do like one of those things with that kind of like what Ricky's doing with Surge with Gentoo. I've told Surge over and over again, I like Gentoo, I like his concept, I like what they're trying to do. I just don't have a billion gajillion hours to sit in front of my computer. And I know he says, do something to fill the time. It's like, but what if what I want to do is on my computer? But it's still compiling i3 for the past 20 minutes. Ooh, well. It's like I need to get like actual work done too on it. It's like I can't like. I mean, no offense to anybody. It's just, I kind of get where, Tom from Switch to Linux is coming from. It's like sometimes you gotta get work done. And I like that Arch gives me that balance. It really is. It's like a Zen. Not the installer, but like actual Zen. It's like I built it myself. It's minimal. It's rolling. It's gonna stay up to date. And it's zippy. It's snappy. It's hella fast. And I've gotten so used to the Pac-Man package manager that it's like. If I had to rank package managers, okay, Pac-Man and Portage would be at the top. DNF and Zipper be close to the top, and apt would be at the bottom. I'm sorry that I had to say that, but back when I was distro hopping, one of my criteria for judging a package manager is its output. Okay, it's its output. Is its output clear, organized? Can I tell what's going on? If an error happens, can I easily figure it out? Is it going to be clear with what the error is? And for me, I put Portage at the top because it's very versatile, it's very functional. I put Pac-Man, DNF, and Zipper at the top as well because I don't have to guess what's happening with the output of those package managers. It tells me that when it's downloading, it tells me when it's installing, And if something, God forbid, goes wrong, it tells me exactly what the error is, how to fix it, blah, blah, moving on. With apt, I found its documentation to be a bit scattered across the internet. So it was hard for me to figure out, aside from the fact that Pac-Man condenses like 3 stringed commands down into one, I just find the output from apt to be a little bit sloppy. It's hard for me to tell what's going on when. And I don't know. It's a personal preference. Please don't shoot me for saying that. Maybe it's just the way my head is wired. But no, when it comes to output organization, I have to put DNF zipper and Pac-Man all tied because they're all clear. They're all very organized with their output. And that to me is part of my criteria for ranking a package manager. So anyway, back to the install. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked there big time. The next thing we're going to set is our time zone. And so all of our time zones are listed in the user share zone info directory. And I guess what this boils down to is the Unix philosophy. Going back to Unix now, their philosophy was to make everything a file, including hard drives, including mount points, including apparently even time zones. Everything is a file. And I don't really understand 100% the concept of that, but apparently it makes things way superior and way easier to do, way easier to deal with, especially for a non-programmer like myself. So anyway, the way that we set the time zone, for me, I'm in New York. My time zone is America/New York. And so I assume you know what your time zone is. So the way we do that is we set up a symbolic link. And to do that, you use the ln command, tac s usr share usr, not ussr, comrade. Zone info, and for me it's America. And if you hit tab a few times, it'll give you a list of possibilities. And so for me it's New York because I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Massachusetts, so the closest thing to me is New York. And where we're going to put this symbolic link is in Etsy/local time. And what a symbolic link is you're not copying the file to that location. You're putting a link for whenever this particular the Etsy local time, whenever that file is referenced, it's going to link it to New York. It's like, picture it, you put a folder on your desktop, but it's linked to another folder somewhere else on your system. So it's basically a shortcut. But I don't know if it's using if that uses the same technology. I've used it for that, but no. Moving on. to the next one. We're going to set the hardware clock. Okay. You probably just heard my cat. It's his witching hour right now. Yeah, if you see him flying through the camera, I apologize. He seems to be doing his thing. Anyway, let me look into what this command actually does. Because I'm honestly not really sure what this is doing here. So, hardware clock is an administrator tool for the time clocks. It can display the hardware clock time, set hardware clock to a specific time. Okay, so it looks like this is synchronizing the time clock time scale, set kernel's time zone, and TP time scale and epoch. Okay, so it looks like we're just synchronizing the time. Okay, so we'll run it. I've done this so many times that I just kind of forget what each command does. It's like, you know, I don't know. I don't know what it's like. I don't know where I was going with that. Okay, so we're on the Arch Wiki. Some of these things are kind of out of, like, in different order from what this guide is telling us. Okay, so the next step, I basically do my installations according to the order of the Glorious Egg Rolls guide. Like, this is like my like this is how I've been programmed to do it, and I basically do it in this order, and it works every time. Unless there's some like wacky hardware I'm unfamiliar with and I have to finagle with it a little bit. Other than that, this guide, this order, maybe with a few tweaks here and there, works for me every time. And this is the guide that I follow every time. Okay, so the next step is we're going to set our host name. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to say echo, which is basically saying repeat this string, this text that I'm going to put in here. Repeat this. I'm going to put it as Arch Linux PC, and we're going to have it forward the output to a file called etc/hostname. And by the way, if you're in any distribution and you want to change your host name, all you have to do is change the contents of that file. That's all you have to do. And these are the things that you learn when you install Arch. And so this here is a step that you're going to want to do if you have a solid state drive. However, in my system, the system that I'm installing this to doesn't have a solid state drive, so I'm not going to run this. However, I did run this on my main ThinkPad here because I do have a solid state drive in this system. So that's something to keep in mind. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our repositories. And so Um, we're going to trigger Ubuntu here. We're going to trigger it because we're going to enable 32-bit support. Mainly because there are many packages that still rely on it. And only a suicidal idiot would shoot themselves in the foot by not supporting essential things. And I'm not saying that we have to run a 32-bit system. No, it's not what I'm saying. But there are many applications out there that still rely on 32-bit libraries, including most games, if you run Steam. One of the perks of running Arch was I completely dodged that whole Ubuntu debacle with the multi-lib crap. So anyway, without further ado, we're gonna take care of this here. Go nano etc pacman.conf. And what this file is, it has a list of repositories and some other settings you can make to make your to make Pacman run a little bit better. For example, I always uncomment this line here. It says color, and you'll see what that does the next time I run Pacman. This here, I uncomment that, and you'll see what this does the next time I run Pacman. As you recall, the output was pretty simple. It's pretty basic the time before. And you don't have to do this, but I do have a habit of enabling the testing repositories. I don't recommend you do this unless, you're ready for the consequences, because you could face breakages. However, in my experience, I've actually had more bug fixes by enabling the latest and greatest than breaks. That's just my experience, and that's why I do that. So I'm going to write it out. I'm going to hit Control X to exit out. Now watch what happens when I run Pacman SYYU. Whoops. Now all of a sudden you got color, right? And the output is telling me a lot more information than before. And it's telling me the new version, the old version, net change, download size. It's giving me the total download size. It's telling me what repo it's in. Now hit Y to upgrade it. And for the record, I did say that I was gonna confirm this in Toss's chat there. I was gonna find out what Linux kernel my current Arch system started with. And so I launched the Pacman log viewer here. So there's no lies, no way to cover this up. I'm looking for Linux, just plain Linux package, to find out which was the first kernel that I installed this to. And this isn't going to tell me how many updates it went through, but I should be able to search for it here. But as you can tell, I installed this. The system was installed on January 4th, and it's been running ever since, with no breaks. Knock on wood. So it looks like it started with 4.20. Okay, and now it's running 5.1.16. I'll let you guys do the math out to find out how many kernel updates this went through. And no breaks. Gotta knock on wood because I know I'm screwing this. Yeah, I have pizza. Um, I've heard of those things, but I'm doing it the archway today. Just to keep things like, just to keep the arch purist trolls happy. And to torture myself. Uh, 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 uh. Yeah, so I just ran the update here. Another little trick I'm going to show you here is I'm going to go back into the pacman.conf and let me see if I got this correctly. But I believe you want to type in I love candy. And I want to hit O to write it and Control X. Now I want to run Pacman, tac SYYU again. And now see I got a little Pac-Man eating the pellets down the status bar. Those are all tricks to beautify your Arch install. Whoops. Didn't mean to do that. Didn't mean to do that either. Excuse me while I fumble around my new keyboard. Ah, yeah, that makes sense. I haven't tried the Arch 5, but I've seen other people use it. Maybe I'll give it a try on my other machine here, or in a virtual machine or something. But for this video, I'm showing the Arch way to do it on an EFI system, and I'm SSH'd into another laptop here, and I'm running the install from the remote session. Reason for that is because there's no easy way to record an Arch install. I've heard of Anarchy. That looks like a pretty interesting project. I tried it once. I don't think it's up on I don't think the Anarchy is up on DistroWatch. I could be wrong about that, but last time I checked, I don't think it was. So it was kind of tough. It was kind of hard for me to find it. Anyway, the next step is we want to create a password for our root user. So we're going to run password, and I'm going to make it a super secret. I'm not going to tell anybody my password. Hopefully I type it right. Okay. And for the record, I did get a new keyboard, which is why I might fumble a little bit. But I'm still getting used to it. And so the next thing we want to do, and I think this is where Steve may have missed it, is this is not on the Arch Wiki, or it's not really clear that you should do this at this time. Yeah, see? It says to set up password for the root user, but it doesn't say that you should create your main user here. And this is one of my complaints about the Arch Wiki. It's very informative, but maybe that's something that should be here. Is okay, now's when you're going to create your own user. And this is why I use multiple guides. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to create ourselves a user. And if you look at this command here, tac M means it's going to create a home folder. Tac G is going to add it to its group. Its main group is going to be users. Tac capital G adds it to other secondary groups, I think that's the word for it. Tac S, you're going to set its shell to bash, and then some username, your intended username. So user add tech m tech g users. Its website was down. Yeah, see, that's never a good sign to me for a Linux distribution. I'm not. That doesn't make me want to use it. Doesn't really scream. Doesn't really scream stability to me. But hey, that's just me. I like the way I tried Anarchy once, and I thought it was like very slick looking. Pack BSD. Uh-oh. Is that an Arch BSD? So you want it to go to storage, so you can access storage. And power. These are groups that you want to make sure that your user is added to, just to avoid confusion down the road. And so I want to make it Angel P. There's a long story behind that name. Maybe I'll get into that someday. But anyway, yeah, that's created the user Angel P to avoid confusion between my host name and that one. So we're gonna go, and now the main thing is we want to make sure that we can run sudo commands. And so, well, first things first, we want to update the password for our newly created user. Well, no, it's not going to be a Linux distro because it's technically BSD. BSD is technically not Linux, even though it's very close to Linux. I think Mac OS is based on a BSD. And so that would make Mac OS not a brother of Linux, but a distant cousin. Oh, Anarchy. So Anarchy is not a Linux distro. Oh. I thought Darwin was the macOS kernel. But I remember reading somewhere or hearing somewhere that macOS was based off of a BSD. I forgot who it was. I think it was when BSD was going through the whole community issues where you're not allowed to give out hugs or something. And they were discussing like security vulnerabilities in BSD and discussing how it was going to affect Mac OS. And that was the first time I heard that Mac OS was actually based on a BSD. I never knew that before. Oh, okay. So Mac OS isn't BSD based then. But I know that Mac OS is Unix based. It does have or it's at least Unix like. So anyway, we're gonna add our user to okay, I think I'm getting it now. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Because I remember back in the day I used to run a Mac, and it did have a terminal. And that was actually where I learned how to navigate a Unix, like Linux, whatever, terminal. And when I came to Linux full time, I wasn't a total stranger to the terminal. A lot of the same commands work. I was able to navigate fine. Some of the utilities are different, but the same basic navigation commands. The network utility command was the same at the time ifconfig. Like obviously now Linux updated that to IPA. I don't know what Mac is using now, but anyway, back to what I just did here. I went a little berserk with the sidetracking here. I opened up a file with a command called vsudo, and it opened up etc sudoers.tmp, and this is where you edit who can run sudo commands. And you want your user to be able to run sudo commands so that you can install, remove packages, system admin stuff. Anyway, you want to go down till you find this line here where it says wheel all equals parentheses all, and you want to uncomment it. In other words, you want to delete the hashtag from it. And that's going to allow anybody in the wheel group to run sudo commands. You do not want to uncomment this one, because this one will allow anybody to run any command without a password. And you obviously don't want that for security reasons. So make sure this is a line that you delete, that you uncomment. And so we're going to Control O to write it out, and Control X to exit. I'm going to go back to this one here. We're going to install bash completion. That'll just make things a little bit easier down the road. And this is where I start pretty soon. This is where I'm going to start diverging from the official wikis and the guides a little bit and going into my own territory here. Just because it doesn't matter how many guides you read, doesn't matter how many things you read, once you install Arch a few times, you're gonna develop your own way of doing it. And there's no right way, there's no wrong way to do it, it's just your way. As long as you get like a working system in the end. Doesn't really matter. So the next thing we're going to run is this command right here, and I'm going to try to copy this one. Hopefully this works. Yep. So we're going to run that. Mount tact EFI varfs, EFI varfs sys firmware, EFI vars, and it should tell you this. Okay, mount EFI is already mounted. Okay, that's a good thing. That means it's already where it needs to be, because we're about to well, I guess if you don't want a working system, you don't need it, but most of us do. And so, warning time, I am not going to install grub. Okay, this guide is using systemd's built-in boot manager called bootctl, or systemd boot, I think it's called. And it's very simple to install. Just run bootctl install. And this only works with EFI. Systemd boot will not work with a BIOS system. Yes, pizza, I'm installing it through SSH. And the reason is because there's no easy way to record it on the host system that it's installing to. This is the best I can do, given my equipment and whatnot. I don't want to point the webcam at it. That would be just kind of sloppy. I know it's sloppy too, but it's a little cleaner. Yes, I set up the SSH on the system. I set the root password, or I set a root password on the live system, and I started the SSHD, the SSH daemon, in order to be able to, secure shell into it. That was like all I did to the live environment. Other than that, it's a completely vanilla Arch Live environment. So the next step is we're going to have to create this file here. Slash boot slash loader slash entry slash arch.conf. And this is basically telling it what to boot from, what images to boot from, and I'm getting kind of lazy here. So guess what? I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna paste it. Whoops. There we go. Okay. So that came out just fine. We're gonna have to add to this later on. But basically, what I think this is doing is telling systemd boot what to boot from, the title, let me see if this explains it any further here. Not really. I guess this just gives it the right images to go on. And I mean, don't mind me, I'm getting kind of sleepy here. But we'll get through it. This isn't my first Arch rodeo. Let's see, how long have I been streaming for? Oh my gosh, 2 hours. Okay. So, yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to write this file, Control O, I don't have those either, Pizza. Oh. Oh. You mean in GNOME? Oops. I gotta read that. I'm doing a challenge. I'm running only stock GNOME. Oh, good luck with that. Oh gosh. Well, I will tell you this, from my experience, the GTK counterparts to most Qt applications tend to work a little less buggier. When I ran KDE, I always found myself falling back to GTK apps, whether it was Kmail, falling back to Evolution or Thunderbird, or its built-in chat client. I would fall back to Pigeon, which is GTK based. And it just got to the point where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to run a GTK based system. Because everything I use is GTK. And I don't like having applications that look foreign to my system on my system. But I didn't like GNOME. I didn't like the way it functioned or the way it worked, and I found it to be a little slow. But GNOME's features seem to work less buggier than KDE's. So I give it that. And basically that's what pushed me to learn the minimal i3 and stuff like that, was I wanted a system where it only has what I know works. And like, to me, my one of my definitions of bloat is features or applications that I cannot remove that don't work on the system. And I'm sorry, KDE has a lot of that. GNOME too, maybe to an extent, but most of GNOME stuff actually works. So it is kind of system heavy, but their stuff actually works, whereas KDE's doesn't. But no, I can't use GNOME without a few extensions here and there. But if you gave me a choice between GNOME and KDE and those are my only two options, sorry, I'd have to pick GNOME. Anyway, back to the install. The next command we're gonna run is gonna add your home partition to the list to your boot file. And basically what this command is gonna do is it automates it. And so we'll go through what this command is gonna do here. We're gonna run echo, and we're gonna put quotation marks here because it's gonna encompass all of this here. And it's gonna put options root equals part UUID equals. Now what this $/parentheses is doing here is it's going to make it execute this command and print the results of it. And so it's not going to print, BLK ID tag S part UUID. It's going to print out the results of this command here. Everything within the parentheses and that everything after that $, inside the parentheses is going to print out the results of that command instead of the command itself. Now, you want to make sure that you put in the RW to make it rewritable. That is very important. And the double quotes. And make sure to put the double forward /caret things to make sure that we're appending it to the end of this file and not completely overwriting it. So with that, we'll run it, and we'll run cat boot loader entries arch.conf. Oh, I know what I did wrong. I know what I did wrong. Shoot me in the foot. Slap me in the back of the head because I screwed that up. I'm gonna go through. I want to delete that last line because I screwed up. I copied that command without thinking, without looking at it first. So we're going to write this out again. I'm going to exit, and I'm going to get back to that command. What I did wrong was this command was set to run it for SDB3 when it should have been SDA3, which is the home partition on this system. And so now we'll run it again, and we're going to run cat. Now, as you could tell, the results of that was a bit different. It printed out the results of that command here, BLK SSID. It printed out the UUID of that particular partition. And so we have that line. And all this command did was basically automate it to make it so that, like, in the past you would have to run this command, write down the UUID, and make sure you get every single number and letter correctly in the correct order. Otherwise you're screwed. But this just automates it and makes it a little bit easier. Yeah, I do like the Budgie desktop environment. Obviously I've gotten very much used to i3, the minimal side of things. I love how snappy it is, how fast it is. But if I had to pick a full-fledged desktop environment, I think my favorite as of now is Cinnamon. And I know it's more for Linux Mint, but I like it for Arch too. Because I think it's the perfect combination of simplicity, stability, and modernity. Whatever, if that's even a word. But Budgie's up there too. But I think Cinnamon has a little more functionality than Budgie. But hey, I mean, that's the beauty of Linux. You know, we run what we want. We run what we have. We have all these choices. It's not just a choice between GNOME and KDE. Thank God. But no, I have Budgie installed on this system too, and I've given Solus a few tries, and I do like Budgie as a desktop environment. Anyway, moving on to the next step. This is something you want to run if you have an Intel processor. You're gonna want to install Intel/U code, and you're going to want to add this line to your arch.conf file, the one we were just in. The computer that Pizza, yeah, that's part of it. I run Arch as my daily driver, by the way. You know, I know it's kind of a meme, but yeah, I haven't really used the Raven menu to the extent that other people have, so I can't really say that I love it or that I can live without it. I mean, it seems to be the only thing that Budgie brings to the table that isn't already there. Right, like we get all these new desktop environments that are coming out, and they all seem to be clones of each other, or clones of something else. And I think the reason is that you can only reinvent the wheel so many times. And I just think it's becoming a bit repetitive. Yeah, but hey, that's just me. I mean, I think XFCE has its place. It's very lightweight, very customizable. I think there are certain desktop environments that have their place, that do things that other ones don't. But I also think a lot of them are struggling to be unique. But I mean, that's just my take on it. But okay, so this particular system here is AMD, so I'm not going to install the Intel stuff here. But here's a part where we're going to kind of diverge into we're going to be kind of doing things Ben's way a little bit as we get into this here. So we're going to install a few things, but we're going to install a list of things. So we're going to run pacman tech s network GNOME is like, some people like to compare it to the macOS UI, but I think that GNOME is very unique. I think it, like, out of the box, it's the most unique desktop environment that we have. I guess you could put Deepin in the same category. The desktop environment. At first, Deepin looks like a Mac clone. But when you start really using it, you realize how like original it really is. Like, it's not a Mac clone. Like, And as far as KDE is concerned, the home user is probably not going to get stock KDE. They're going to get something that's been curated for them if it ever hits the market as something like that. And so whoever's packaging it can rearrange KDE to make it look unique. But no, KDE, like out of the box, looks a lot like Windows. And I think a lot of people might see that as like something unoriginal. I see what you mean with that. So what we're going to do here is we got Network Manager. These are things you're going to want to do if you have an NVIDIA card. The machine I'm installing this to does not have NVIDIA, so I'm going to skip these for that machine. The machine I have here does have an NVIDIA card, and it has an NVIDIA Quadro with 2 gigs of RAM on it. It's not the most powerful thing in the world, but it gets the job done. Plays most games or whatever, but I mean, I did have to go through a little bit of finagling to get the NVIDIA working on that system, and it is NVIDIA Optimus. So that was a even bigger challenge to get that working. But anyway, the reason I'm going through this now is I'm going to copy and paste a lot of these packages because I like to this is the part where I like to condense steps. And so the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to get all these things in with one swoop. And it looks like this guy, he's trying to install KDE. And I get it. He wants to install something that's simple, gives you a lot of control. And I do get it. But for me, I think I'm going to go with something different. Let me just go down, make sure there's no packages I missed. Yeah, I'll install the Mesa. And just to go down the list here, Network Manager, this is to make sure that you have networking when you reboot into your graphical environment. Afterwards, we're going to enable the network managing service. We're going to install Xorg stuff here. This is going to basically allow you to have a graphical environment. Then down here he's gonna want you to install Plasma, but I'm not a big KDE fan, so I'm gonna install my another desktop environment. I'm not really sure which one I should do. If anyone has any suggestions, I'm open to them. But we're going to general recommendations. This will give you a list of desktop environments. So here's the rules. I'm only going to install an officially supported desktop environment. Reason being is because a lot of these unsupported desktop environments would be a pain in the butt to get installed. And the other thing is I refuse to have core components of my system rely on the AUR. That's just not going to happen. I love the AUR for certain things, but it could be a hit or miss in that AUR. So I'm not going to have a desktop environment from the AUR. Sorry. I'm not going to have core pieces of my system relying on that. So I mean, I might just go with GNOME for simplicity's sake. Or I might do XFCE. But okay. So we will go with torn between either GNOME or Cinnamon. Or you know what? I'm open to doing window managers too, but mainly OpenBox or i3. Because I'm not a programmer, and for me to do a window manager, its config file has to be written in easily legible format for me. i3 does that for me, and OpenBox does that for me in another way. OpenBox has a lot of graphical, like minimal graphical utilities to get it set up. So I can deal with OpenBox, I can deal with i3. But maybe for simplicity's sake, I'll keep it as a full desktop environment. I do like Cinnamon. But I do think that for a more complete desktop environment, for a newer user, I think maybe I will go with GNOME. So in order to get GNOME installed, and I do draw in a lot of GNOME packages and a lot of GNOME utilities to help me with my i3 setup here. I don't load GNOME up every day. I might log into it when a new update comes in just to see what they're up to. But it's definitely not my main desktop environment. But it does, some of its utilities are useful. So I want to have it install GNOME and the GNOME extra. Ah, Cinnamon. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I just saw the chat. Yeah, I could do Cinnamon. One thing that you're gonna want to install if you're gonna use Cinnamon is you might want to install some GNOME tools. The Cinnamon group does not come with a terminal by default. You will want to install GNOME terminal. But matter of fact, you know what? With Cinnamon, I will install GNOME and GNOME Extra as well. Reason being is that we'll draw in some tools that you will find useful if you're running Cinnamon or any GTK based app too. You don't have to run GNOME, but you will find some of its tools are used in other desktop environments. They don't come with those groups. So this does kind of simplify things to an extent. So let me just go through, make sure I got everything. And by the way, I learned that the hard way. The first time I installed a vanilla Arch system with Cinnamon, I logged into Cinnamon for the first time. Matter of fact, I'm going to install a couple. These are the display managers. GTK. Matter of fact, let me go through and just make sure I'm getting everything I need for late DM. We're going to go into display managers. Display manager. Oh, come on. I thought there was an Arch page for display managers. We'll search the wiki. Display managers. Okay, so we're gonna go with LightDM. And there are a few things you need to install to get LightDM working. You will need a greeter, and it helps to have a settings manager for LightDM. And so we're gonna start LightDM, and LightDM GTK greeter. LightDM GTK. Let me write a quick, make sure I get the right. Best way to do this is check. Just gonna make sure I get the right name. Okay. GTK greeter, no settings, okay. And trust me, all this stuff is gonna come in handy. And matter of fact, you can have more than one display manager installed. You just can't enable more than one at one time. So like, let's say for example I'm installing GDM and LightDM here. Well, you can do that, but when it comes crunch time I can only choose one of these to enable. And so, without further ado, we're going to run the install. Matter of fact, I'm going to have it install Firefox too. You need a web browser, right? And Chromium. Couldn't hurt. Like I said, everybody's got their own way of doing this. I am no different. And now it's going through, it's going to download all these packages, so while it's doing that I could probably chat it up here. It's getting kind of late. Uh-oh. Are we having mirror problems here? Uh-oh. I'm gonna stop that there. And I'm gonna run Pacman SYY. Why? I don't want it to run the update, I just want it to synchronize the repositories. We'll give this another shot. Oh my god. This is having issues. Hey, Cat Gamer, how you doing? guess we can see where this goes. I am attempting a live Arch install. Now I'm getting kind of sleepy, so I'm thinking after this installs, if it reboots properly, I'll show that I got it working. And then I'll probably hit the hay and maybe go through the setup tomorrow. But yeah, once this is done, I'm going to enable the network manager. And assuming everything installs properly, I'm going to enable the display manager, of course, as well, light DM. And I can almost, assuming that everything installs properly here, I can almost 100% guarantee that this system is going to reboot into my graphical environment. And we did it the Arch way. From the command line. So the Arch purist trolls can have their pacifier and just like let it be. Because I mean, at the end of the day, if you're a vanilla Arch user and you think Arch is the greatest thing since sliced bread, which I do, you would be happy to see anybody run any Arch-based distro too, because they're taking advantage of the Arch of they're getting the advantages of Arch. And so like when I see Manjaro as number 1 on Distro Watch, which I know it's not number 1 anymore, but it was for a while. And it's still a close number 2. I was very pleased with that, because it's like, okay, Manjaro's taken the Arch family to the finish line. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not an Arch purist, right? Like, I run vanilla Arch, but that's because I have my own gripes about running a distro that's based on a distro. Like, Mint is stable, but Mint is based off of Ubuntu, and Ubuntu is based off of Debian. So it's like you have 3 points of failure there. And if you're going to troubleshoot something that goes wrong, you're going to have to look on like 3 or 4 different forums, and it's like, oh my gosh. I like to keep my distros as close to the source as possible. And so that's one of the reasons why I run plain vanilla Arch rather than an Arch-based distro. That being said, if anything were to happen to this Arch installation that I have here, which, by the way, has been running perfectly since January, I would probably go Manjaro, just to stay in the Arch family and to be lazy. You know, I mean, so let's see if this works properly. If it doesn't, then I might looks like it's almost done downloading stuff. It did have an error before. Yeah, I thought it would. Let's see, so what was the package name that failed? DNSSEC. So I know I just synced all the repositories, so DNSSEC anchors. Oh. Okay. So a simple Pacman SYYY, I'll make sure that it, and I'll run the upgrade with it. How about that? Okay. Let's try running Pacman S. We'll just install the... Why is it still trying to get... Okay, you know what we're gonna do? This is an example of a very rare issue happening in Arch. And I'm gonna tell you exactly what's happening here. For some reason, it's looking for the wrong package version. It does exist, and I'm going to show you a little trick here. I'm going to install the Lynx web browser. And there's a reason for this. I'm going to run Lynx archlinux.org. By the way, Lynx is a text-based web browser. If you were watching Steve earlier, he checked out an article that talked about Lynx, and this is one of those cases where Lynx is gonna come in handy, because I'm gonna use it to download this particular package. And I'm gonna manually install it. I feel like I misspelled that. I did. Thank you, keyboard. Okay, there's no H as well. So we'll run a search for that now. And it looks like we spelled it correctly now. So, by the way, this is a text-based web browser. As you can tell, it's showing what you would see here, but in complete text format. And this comes in handy now because this install only has text. I haven't put a graphical install on this system just yet. And so this is a perfect way to download a package or to browse the internet if I really need to. So it looks like I downloaded the package just fine. At ls, it is here, so we're going to run pacman tac-u manually installs a package. That's like running pacman tac capital U is the the Debian equivalent would be dpkg tac I to manually install like a deb package. Only we're doing it with a tarball, and we're going to install that. Hopefully that satisfies that dependency. And we'll do it again. And voila, issue has been fixed. There you saw an example of how, yes, a rolling release can have bugs here and there, but none that are too difficult to fix, and they're very few and far between. And that could have also been because I did, in all fairness, enable the testing repositories. And so I did kind of do that to myself. Let me see. Still got 3 people watching. Ah. You guys must be sadists, but I'm the masochist. I actually enjoy this kind of stuff, this kind of troubleshooting like this. As far as the Lynx web browser goes, I have taken a liking to it for certain things, including, but not limited to, the Newsboat RSS reader. I did try Toss's the ticker feed, TICKR. I tried it. However, I found it to be kind of intrusive, in the sense that it the feed would go across my windows, and if I try to go up to hit file or something, hey Ricky, how you doing? I know it's late. I've been running a live Arch install. I was gonna make it an open chat, but I figured that Jitsi was gonna add some complications to this already overly complicated stream. Unfortunately, I have work tomorrow, but maybe after work I'll do a live stream where I demonstrate like maybe I'll boot up the system just to show that it works. Matter of fact, I'll probably show that here. I have installing GNOME and Cinnamon. But I'm gonna probably have it boot up in Cinnamon because I Pizza voted for Cinnamon and he was the only vote. So Cinnamon it is. But as I explained earlier, if you install vanilla Cinnamon with Arch, it will not come with a terminal. And so you want to make sure to install the GNOME terminal with it. Just to make sure you get a terminal, which you're going to find is incredibly important in an Arch system. However, what I did was I installed Cinnamon and I installed the GNOME and the GNOME Extra packet groups. And so GNOME terminal did come with either GNOME or the GNOME Extra, one of them. It comes with GNOME. The next thing we're going to do here is we're going to run systemctl enable network manager, and you want to make sure that the N and the M are capitalized as such. That's going to create the symlinks, so we'll make sure to have networking at the next reboot. The next thing we want to make sure we have is a graphical login manager. Now I installed LightDM and GDM, but since we're going to be using Cinnamon, I'm going to use LightDM. Whoops, it would be help if I typed in the word enable with an E now. Ricky, I know you're joining late. If you must know the reason I'm fumbling a little bit with the keyboard, because I bought a new keyboard. It's a little quieter, it's a little flatter than what I'm used to. So I've been kind of fumbling around a bit. And they put the mod key, like as you can tell on the laptop here, my super key is on the left hand side. They put the super key, which I use as my mod key, on the right hand side of this keyboard. And so my muscle memory here is all funked up. And so I'm fumbling a little bit with this keyboard. It's been a bit of a trip. Cause my left thumb keeps reaching for the mod key, which is now a function key, and nothing happens when something was supposed to happen. And I remember, oh yeah, it's on the right hand side, and I go for the right hand side, and I'm trying to force my hands to relearn everything. But the keyboard was kind of worth it because it's wireless. It opened up 2 USB ports for me because it came with the mouse, wireless mouse as well. So I mean, I guess it's a trade-off. If I really hate it that bad, I'm gonna just get my old keyboard. But like I said, the problem is the other one's like louder than sin, and it kept waking my baby up in the middle of stuff that I'm busy with, and I'm just like, okay, I got sick of that, so I bought this one hoping that it's more quiet. But anyway, now that we got everything set, as far as I know, as far as I can tell, unless I forgot something, this should boot up into a working Arch system. And so I'm going to exit from my system, or from the Arch root, and I'm going to exit from my SSH. I'm going to clear it. There are certain things that I personally do for my setup. For example, I usually install an AUR helper during this process, during the install, and I usually install ZSH and set that up as well. However, I didn't do that this time because I'm feeling tired and lazy, and I can do that tomorrow. Those are things you can do like anytime. So I'm going to clear that. And so here we go. Moment of truth. Well, I can only stretch the webcam so far. Can you guys see? Let me see. Bring the laptop a little closer so I can move the webcam a little closer, maybe. Okay. Well, I wanted to display the reboot in all its glory, but maybe that won't happen right now. Can anyone confirm if they can actually see the screen? This is a laptop that I installed Arch on via SSH. So I'm going to run the reboot command. And I'm sorry about this. This is as close as I can get the webcam. So here we go. Knock on wood. And at first the Light Display Manager is nothing but a black screen with the login. And voila! We have a working Arch system. That wasn't so hard, was it? And it's set to cinnamon, which is what we wanted. I'm gonna log in. Sometimes it can take a while, the initial launch. And cinnamon can take a minute too. So we'll make sure we have networking working. Yep. That's the network manager. Loaded up perfectly fine. We can join home, which is my network. Put the webcam facing away so you can't see my super secret WPA key. Also to free up my hand so I can actually type it out. Yeah, so that's it. That's how I personally install my Arch systems when I do. As you can tell, it works. As long as you know your hardware, it will work. What more can I say? If there's any questions, comments, concerns, let me see. The other thing I think some people want to has to make sure that there's sound. But then again, let me tell you something about Pulse Audio. Okay. I don't know if it's what was used back in the old days. But what I remember is sometimes having to enable the sound service and to get it working in certain distributions. And now, depending on which distro or which desktop environment I pick, Pulse Audio comes enabled by default. And all I gotta do is put the volume up. So I'm not saying it's perfect, but we've come a long way. And I don't know if you can see that. It is up and running with a pretty basic cinnamon install. By the way, I did install Firefox and Chromium during the when I installed all the Xorg stuff and the desktop environments and stuff. I usually install all that stuff at once. Anyway, that's the base install of Arch. Where the cinnamon. Yeah, that's as far as I'm gonna go tonight because I am exhausted. Normally now is when I would install Yay. Get the AUR stuff that I use. Etc, etc. But I could do that tomorrow. I know it's the 4th of July, but I got no plans tomorrow. So, there's nothing stopping me from doing that to show, and I'll just do the recording right from that um, right from that machine. Yeah, so that's it. Is anybody still in the chat there? Anybody want any questions, comments? I hope I showed that um, that Arch could be a pain, maybe, but it's not impossible, and it doesn't hurt nearly as much as they say it does. So, any comments on this? Is anybody sitting through it for the whole install? I know I went off in a left field a few times. As it tends to happen during these live installs, but as you saw, I was able to install it while going into left field, while being distracted by the comments here, which I'm not blaming you guys for that. But as you can see, it's not as hard as people make it out to be. It's just a little involved. And once you get the hang of it, there's nothing that's gonna stop you. Except Broadcom. You know, Broadcom will stop you. That's Broadcom's mission in life, is to stop people from running Arch. Yeah, Broadcom, my sentiments towards you are Linus Torvalds' sentiments towards NVIDIA, but I'm not gonna express it the same way, because this is on YouTube. But just know that I don't like you, Broadcom. NVIDIA is easier to work with than Broadcom. NVIDIA is a pain too, but I don't get a kernel panic every update. But the reason I did that through SSH was to be able to record it, to be able to make sure it's on real hardware, and on an EFI system. And as you can see, it booted up just fine. It worked perfectly. So, I mean, I showed, just how possible it is to get it done. Yeah. If you rewatch the live stream, it's going to be a lot of me waiting for people to come in. It's going to be a lot of going off into the weeds here and there. But I think it goes to show just how easy Arch can be. That I was able to have a conversation with you guys while installing it. Alright, it's not that hard now, is it? And I hope that I displayed that. I hope that I showed that it doesn't hurt nearly as much as people say it is. And that's why it's a meme. Okay, that's why it's a meme. When people say, by the way, I use Arch, and they try to make themselves look all special and elite for doing so, you're not special. I just showed to the world that you're not special. Okay, anybody can do it. With a decent wiki in front of them, with a decent guide in front of them. Okay, so, I mean, stop. Stop putting people down when they can't install Arch. Stop being an elitist, just stop it. You're not special for installing Arch. Anybody can do it. And I mean, I guess I'll just end it here. In that, this right here, Arch Elitist, is why you're a meme. It's because you think you're special and you're not. And by the way, I use Arch as my daily driver. And it doesn't make me any more special than someone running Ubuntu. And it doesn't make Yonis more special either. So with that sentiment in mind, just know, to those looking to try Arch, as not as hard as it looks. It is a learning curve, but once you get the hang of it, it's all you're going to want to run. Trust me. Couple reasons why are like I stated before, it takes care of most dependencies, and I like the rolling release model. I don't have to wipe my drive every 6 months when a new version number comes out. And keeping things up to date. For all the chatter going around that keeping things up to date is unstable, I've actually seen more bug fixes and more issues get fixed quicker in the rolling release model of Arch than in fixed releases like Debian or Ubuntu, where bugs tend to sit until the next version release. Whereas with Arch, it's like the second that the fix is out, it's boom, there, and it's fixed. As a matter of fact, that's why I enabled the testing repositories when I install Arch. And I don't recommend everybody do that unless you're willing to maintain a system, because I run into certain bugs with testing repositories where other packages hadn't updated their dependency list to the newer versions yet, and I've had issues with that. Pretty basic issues, pretty basic to troubleshoot and to get it working again. And those issues have been fixed in literally the same day. And so I give the community props when it comes to that. But no, like a few years back when I first started with Arch, there was a bug in something. I forget what it was by now. It was so long ago. But I went to the forums to figure out what the issue was, and they said you have that in the newest version, the bug was already fixed. And it said that the easiest way to get the newest version was to enable the testing repositories. So that's what I did. Boom, got the updated package, bug was fixed. System's been working ever since. And yeah, so I mean, those are my reasons for running Arch. And I'm getting exhausted, and most of you is probably asleep anyway. Yeah, I only got 3 people watching because it's almost 1 a.m. So with that in mind, keep a lookout for tomorrow. I get off work around 7:30. By the time I get everything settled, get the baby to sleep, and assuming nobody else is streaming, I could possibly do a stream, or maybe I'll do this as a pre-recorded thing where I'll go through my initial setup of how I initially set up my Arch system. You know, like getting ZSH working. And I know I've been running fish on this system, but I think ZSH is a little simpler to get set up. So I'll do ZSH because I can make it look pretty and it's a little bit less complicated than fish. But yeah, I'll go through installing the first few AUR packages. You do have to install the Archway, but basically to install the AUR helper you have to do the Archway because you know you don't have an AUR helper till you install the AUR helper. But that's a perfect opportunity to display how to install something the Archway from the AUR. And I'll show how I get ZSH set up, how I get my initial system set up, and how I just basically configure it to my liking. And you know, normally I'd run i3, which we can get into that too. But for the newer user, I think maybe a graphical interface like Cinnamon would be better to display it. And I'll go through my main setup maybe in another video. So with that, I'll say to everybody, have a good night or a good morning, because it is technically the AM now and I am exhausted. So with that in mind, I will say have a good night and have a great Arch week. Dana, Dana, Dana. Dana, Dana, Dana. Da, 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 da. It's Arch week. Get it? Some people, Arch is scarier than sharks. You know, some people are scared of Shark Week, but in the Linux community, we're scared of Arch Week. Anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. If I can't live stream the setup, I will pre-record it and just upload it. So yeah, have a great night, and hopefully I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye bye.